Hey folks, welcome back to FreepCast. I am Casey Eck filling in for Rob Murray, and I am joined by Joe Spear, the managing editor of the Free Press, back again with a lot of news.
Lot of news. The biggest news, of course, happened yesterday with the Dakota Riders coming for their traditional commemoration of the Dakota War and the hanging of the 38 plus two. A bigger event than in the past. Really cool. Two different rides, one from Santee, Nebraska, the other from South Dakota. The South Dakota ride was the reconciliation ride, if I've got that right.
Yep.
And the Nebraska ride was the exile ride. And tremendous participation. What are we thinking, 50 horse riders or
Yeah,
so?
by the end, probably about that by the end. But I mean, throughout the whole course of the journey, probably 50 is a good number. I'd say 25 a piece. Coming and going, ebbing and flowing as they enter new communities. There's new riders.
It was really cool, and a nice ceremony down at the memorial where the names of the 38 were read, and it's very moving kind of ceremony and some good discussion and some good talking about Dakota history. And I think it's getting more and more attention as we have this over and over again. Last year we kind of had a reboot, and now this ride has come back stronger than ever, and it looks to be continuing for a long time. There were a lot of young riders, am I right?
Yeah. In fact, most that I encountered were under the age of 21. I'd pick a guy, and he said he's 21, and he was among the older riders. That was Destry Owen we talked to when they were in Lake Crystal. I chatted with him, and those guys around the 20 or maybe 18 to 21. They're kind of the leaders of the group.
That's fantastic to see, because I know that's what the elders were wanting, the young people to take up the charge and continue this. And so great to see. And you don't find a lot of 21-year-olds who want to ride 300 miles on a horseback.
No.
I mean, that is incredible. And how they do it. I know I was reading. I mean, they ride for 7-8 hours a day, and then they let the horses rest. And
yeah, it's not quite that long. I mean, maybe on a longer day it could be about that, but they're generally shorter stints, I suppose. If you divide 300 or so miles by little under 2 weeks, that you can do the math, I suppose. So about 30 miles on the long end a day.
Wow. And you were tracking them this year longer than we've ever tracked, I think. You went out to Westbrook to meet them last Friday, I believe it was. And tell us about, your thoughts on getting that much photography and getting that many images and just tracking the group. What was your motivation? What was your strategy?
There's to touch on the point of motivation. I had several motivations. One, and just out of full journalistic disclosure, a lot of these people are my friends to some extent or another. So I've known a lot of these folks for a few years now. I was lucky enough to take a part in the 2022 ride, the final 38 plus 2 ride. I was welcomed, I should say. I don't want to mischaracterize that and say I was any part of the planning or anything like that, but I was welcomed for that ride, and I got to know a lot of these same faces. And so part of my motivation was just to pretty much to come full circle on a lot of that, to reintroduce myself to some of these folks, to kind of see where they've been. And I knew that when it came to the big meetup in Mankato, I knew that I wanted to have already had the ice broken, because those you only get one chance at those images, and good images can really only come from a trust that you build. So I wanted to build that trust as early in the process as possible, and just show them that I'm not here to make anybody's life hard or to depict them in any ways that are unfair, anything like that. And I just wanted to get that FaceTime in, is essentially the long and short of it.
When you say build trust, that's interesting, because does that have an effect of they're comfortable with you and therefore able to be themselves in what they would normally do and not have to worry about posing?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I wanted to get the camera out as quickly as possible without rushing the camera. if I ever get the time in any given assignment, I'll not even touch my camera until an hour into it. If given the possibility, I will. In fact, in a perfect world, I would meet with a person for a week before even touching my camera, just because you learn so much, and they learn so much. The subject or those whose stories you're telling learn so much about you. And the more I do this, the more I realize that it's very much a two-way street. So if they're willing to tell me about their lives and the hardships that they're dealing with, I feel it's only fair to do the same. And so that trust is it's an interpersonal trust. And then if somebody's going to welcome you into their teepee, you better be willing to share something about yourself in those instances. And so in doing that, you definitely dissolve that barrier. And by the time you're taking photos, they don't notice you, because they know that you're not a threat or gonna make anybody's life hard or anything like that. And so, to your point, it's the camera just kind of dissolves. You're always going to be noticed. People like to think that you're kind of a fly on the wall, but it's not. You're never a fly on the wall. You're part of it. In any story you're telling, you're part of it. You're never a passive observer. And so, getting that time in to introduce yourself on multiple levels, it only leads to better images.
Yes, and you had a number of images. We ran many more than we've ever run in the newspaper, trying to just really highlight a local event by local news. And what were you trying to, starting from Westbrook and going to the different settings, what were you trying to show or tell with your photos?
That's a very good question. I was trying to show that it was not just this grand entrance. There was a lot of quiet moments. There was a lot of learning experiences that these mostly young men were going to. There was a fair amount of young women there as well, I should note, and adult women as well. So I don't want that to get lost either. But I wanted to show that it wasn't just this horseback ride. It was a horseback ride. It was camaraderie. It was animal husbandry. There's so many facets to this event that I think often isn't told. Because to be fair, it's hard to, as a news organization, devote that much time to show all these things. So I thought if we have the chance, I'll show the multifaceted nature of this, because that's the only way to fairly and as completely as possibly tell that story.
Yeah, I thought it was cool that we showed them, bunking down by the fire for the night in a sleeping bag in a barn or wherever they were sleeping.
Or outside, yeah.
Or outside.
Isaiah Keeble, the grandson of Wilfred, he was just sleeping right outside at Land of Memories, and just a heat block and a fire. That's all I needed.
Wow. That is amazing. There's so many great aspects to the story, the history, the spiritualism, really, that I think attracts people. People like myself who are not non-native, obviously, and don't, have not had a lot of exposure to that culture. I'm really amazed by the spiritual nature of it, the peaceful nature of it, the environmental nature of it. Always, holding sacred the earth, and they have a lot of themes going through it that I think many religions would benefit from learning about. So that was really cool coverage. And of course, the day of the big event, Tim Crone had the story there, and many, many other news organizations covered it, which didn't always happen in the past. It kind of came to be known on the 150th anniversary, which was 2012. And I was looking back at that because we want to follow up. The Exile Ride was all about excuse me, the Dakota and Ojibwe, I believe, right? We wrote a law that said they need to be exiled from Minnesota after the war, and the law was still on the books even as early as as late as 2012. And although it was ignored, of course, because he has many tribes in Minnesota now, but it's still there. And I think there is also an effort by Representative Dean Erdahl, local legislator in 2012, to get it off the books, but you had to get Congress to agree to it. I'm not sure of all the nuances, but we want to follow up because that's been 12 years since we know. Is it still on the books? And I guess it is.
I saw some movement in 2019 on some of the matter. I don't know exactly but I don't know how much material difference it hit.
Yeah, and I believe Mark Dayton, when he was governor, which I think was in 2012, I read his statement, and he renounced all the things the previous, Governor Ramsey and everybody had said about the need to banish and exile and make extinct the Dakota. So he just came out and said, we reject all of that now, even though it's in our history. And I want to find out. I've got a contact into Representative Erdahl to see if he can update me on where that's all at, and can't we, maybe resurrect the call to get it off the books. I don't think it would be that hard, and maybe people just gave up. But we want to follow up on that, and that's what we'll do as your local newspaper that's paying attention to the local issue. And
one thing to emphasize as well, with it being two rides, while they kind of from 10,000 feet up look kind of identical, they did have separate missions in a way. The Exiles ride, of course, wanted to call attention to the modern and historic troubles that Native peoples had faced in the wake of the U.S. Dakota War of 1862. That was the name and the emphasis of that. So, talking to Jimmy Hallam, the organizer, he had emphasized the modern struggles in particular. He had asked me, how many people do you know who have committed suicide? And I had to think for a moment, and then he asked, how many people do you know who have been abducted or murdered? And I had to, and then the answer to that is no one. I don't know anybody who's been abducted. And he said, well, all these kids here, they know at least one person. And so that was sobering, to say the least, just to get a sense for just a small taste of what some of these people on reservations are facing. And I looked it up as well, and just the life expectancy, general population of the United States is about 75, and on the reservation it's 65, so 10
Wow.
years already. And then Jimmy had noted that in some places it's in the 50s and even into the 40s.
Wow.
And so it's pretty stark.
Yeah, I'm glad they brought up those common modern issues, more current issues, because they're still there. It's not just the history. They're still there dealing with all the problems, all the generational trauma, all those things we don't think about. And so the ceremony can tend to be looking back and, memorializing. But I'm really glad I heard them talk about current day issues with the Native Americans. That was really a good addition, I think, to the education piece. And I hope somehow the schools, and maybe they are taking something from this. It'd be nice if somebody videotaped it or something like that, and they could bring these lessons to the schools, because I think it's still kind of undertaught at the schools. Yep,
and of course, and it can't go without saying, the fact that in the wake of this conflict there were innocent white settlers who were killed and abused in other ways, and so that can't be left unsaid. But of course, the modern struggle is very much real today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people point to the Minnesota Historical Society as a pretty true narrative of the war. They've done a lot of research, and they usually get diaries and recalls from both sides. So I've pointed to them often if people really want to get the, pretty objective, straightforward tale where a lot of people were killed and died. And so it's worth doing. And it's great. Mankato's kind of in the center of this reconciliation idea.
Yeah. And
because I think people point to it and say, look at what Mankato could do with this highly charged historical
very
racial
much so.
issue.
And in the aftermath of the conflict, the exile was call it an atrocity against innocent Native people as well. And so there's so much to this history that you just have to look into it. I mean, in to the respected sources at the Minnesota Historical Society and the neighboring states' historical societies, I'm sure are good resources to find that history as well. So it's if nothing else, it's just a worthwhile endeavor to look into the holistic nature of this history.
Yeah, and I know Tim Crone was happy. He usually covers it. That the Great Spirits were looking down, giving us a 38-degree day. So that was nice too.
That's funny.
Another news, kind of on the sobering side, another murder in Mankato involving young people happened last Saturday. Gunshot fatality again down by East Walnut Street by the courthouse, kind of in the same place we had that one in February. And again, two young men in a dispute, according to the police report, where drugs were involved, 18, 19-year-old. But I believe it was the 18-year-old was shot in the head. And later, somehow by car, got driven down a few blocks to not far from where the Boy in Blue Monument is in Lincoln Park. And so investigators did arrest a suspect, and we'll have to deal with that. So that's the second one in a year, which doesn't sound like a lot if you're in Minneapolis, but it sounds like a lot if you're in Mankato.
And the second one on that, 2-block stretch, in fact.
Near the Free Press here. I mean, it's 5-6 blocks from the Free Press. Yeah. And then there's the unsolved murder of the younger person as well up on Balzerzak, which I believe happened late 2023. And I looked up our archive, and police are still offering a $15,000 reward for information in that case. So some concerning crime news here that we just have to let people know about, and I think people have to be aware of, and, pay attention to your surroundings. And these are areas where during the day they're perfectly nice areas. I go for a walk in the summer around 5 o'clock after work right through these areas, and they're beautiful places to walk. But, yeah, a little concerning.
Is there any concern to the general public that we know about for
No,
these things?
they said they don't believe anyone is at risk because it was two people who were related. And, it's good that police say that, because if you don't say it, it leaves people to speculate and go online and say things that are not true. So I'm glad police are doing that. A couple other newsy things. I think a lot of people were familiar with the Curiosity House, a cool local business that had a variety of tea. And she had a building on Commerce Drive in North Cato. She's closing, but she's also helping with another Curiosity tea shop that she helps run or runs in Winona. And it sounded like there was interest in the building, so not a sad ending totally. She's the owner is going to get something for the building, and it must be of interest to someone, so maybe we'll see a new business there. Other news I thought was interesting. North Mankato are going to face big bills for their local share of the redone Highway 169 makeover. That's the one out north of town where they're going to make the roundabouts, by Webster Avenue there and by North Cato. And so, this isn't all just free money that comes from the state. It's important to know the locals have a share in it. And I think it's going to be a great makeover. I think it's going to ease traffic. And I think it's one of those things they're trying to improve the look of the gateways of the city. When you come in down from that way, you kind of see bombed out industrial buildings and decrepit property. And so I think this is going to boost that. North Cato is also looking for ideas for how they can build a rec center. They've got $12.5 million in their sales tax fund, so they're looking for ideas. At one time, they were just going to add it to the Caswell complex, but now it seems like they're rethinking that a little bit. And should it be a rec center, like just for competitive sports teams to be in there and youth teams or whatever, or should it be more of a community rec center like St. Peter has, where the public can come in? So kind of an interesting debate. You can weigh in with your representatives over there in North Mankato. Another interesting story coming up, Mankato's own Emily Schumacher is Miss Minnesota. She was Miss Mankato. She's going to compete in the Miss America pageant, right? December 31st. In the running, but you spent some time with her in Mankato here, photographing, getting a story that we ran last Friday, along with a video. Tell me what that was like.
Yeah. So every time I'd call her or text her, she was always busy. And one of the things that she mentioned in our on-camera interview, was that she can't just cancel these things. So I just want to thank her for being so gracious with her time. She always was able to, at some point in her timeline, fit me in. So that was really cool, just to get that level of access to somebody who's going to be representing our state on the national and to some extent the international stage. So really cool to get that look. It was a multi-visit effort, so I caught her in, I want to say, October, when she was giving one of her CPR classes, which is part of her heart health initiative that she is doing through her Miss Minnesota title. And so I caught her back in October, and then I caught her maybe a couple weeks ago for just a sit-down interview, and then I caught her at her going away party, just the final send-off. And so it was a really cool kind of episodic journey through her nearing this competition. So
day in the life type stuff.
Yeah, very much so. Of course, you'd like to get all the nuances. I'm sure her day in the life would have been a little bit more hectic than than we were able to show. But she was really gracious, and people were really happy to see her at her going away party, and I wish her luck.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to take a longer approach and show a little bit more instead of the standard interview. What's it like? And then, like other media, maybe they're done or that's all they have time for. So we have time for video, we have time for photos, we have time for interviews, and I think we let the community really know what's going on with that, and let them know a little bit about her. So a great story. That, like, again, I believe that ran last Friday in the current section. Another shout out I want to talk about Mankato people. East teacher, choir teacher Andrea Brinkman Waterby was named the Outstanding Music Educator of the Year for the state of Minnesota. A pretty big deal. And so we got up with her and interviewed her and went to one of her classes where she was teaching choir, and you got some photos from that. What was cool about her story...
Holly got the pictures, actually. Yeah, very good. Yeah,
corrected.
She got some really good choir class photos.
Yes. What was really cool about her story, she kind of had a rough growing up, had some alcoholism in her family and troubles. And at a young age, she found choir and the camaraderie of choir and the joining together of choir, and kind of the nature of, gathering with other people in same interest as kind of a solace, as kind of her way to feel more calm about her life and feel a little bit better about it. And so it drives her motivation to be a choir teacher, to have gone through all of this, and she sees it as a way to help kids that are having troubles. And what a great story, what a great idea, something maybe you don't think about in the day-to-day choir. We got to go to choir teacher, but singing and being in a choir and making music is very cathartic, I think, and healing for some kids.
And it's cool that somebody with such a story, it would have been possible for her to just go her whole career without anybody knowing such a story. But it's cool that her story is both known and celebrated.
Yeah, and that's, again, goes back to what we love about the work we do and the journalism we do. It's not just, telling about taxes and school board, but it's talking to people and what their motivations are. And don't you always want to hear everybody's story about how they got to where they are and what's interesting about it? And that's one thing I think we do really well with all the experienced journalists we have here, that you don't just get that by walking up to people. You really got to learn how to listen. And as you were talking about earlier, gain the trust of people we talk to. And their stories are worth telling. And that's the other thing I think a community newspaper like the Free Press really aims to do. It's more than just the hard facts of news and crime and taxes. It's the people stories that sort of bring people together in a community in a way that's not always obvious, but still there. I think that's about all we have for today. Upcoming, we're going to be doing some stories on following up on this homeless news that just came out today. U.S. homeless people, number of homeless people up 18%. That's kind of crazy.
That's a big jump.
That's a big number. They say it's partly, after the pandemic, nobody had housing protection anymore. It's partly a large influx of people who want to work from our immigrants, but they don't have housing. It's partly from just hugely unaffordable housing prices. People can't afford it. And it's more visible in Mankato, too. So we're going to be following up on that and trying to give people information about what's happening and, more important, what they can do to help. So that's one of the big stories we'll be coming up. Otherwise, I want to just thank everyone for listening once again. If you'd like to sponsor this podcast, you can still check it out with our advertising department, 344-6364. If you want to subscribe, you can go to our website under the subscriptions menu, or you can email readerservice@mankatofreepress.com, or use the old-fashioned phone, 625-3764. You can also get reprints of our photos in our paper from SPX Sports by clicking on our photo reprint button on our website, or call SPX 345-7196. Other than that, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you, everybody. Thanks.